Great. So welcome everyone who's just joined. We'll just wait a couple of seconds for everyone else to jump on. Okay, give everyone a minute or so. Should be a poll coming up on your screen soon. Here we go. So just to kick things off, we'd love to hear from you and make this as interactive as possible. I'll give everyone a moment to answer just as we wait for the final attendees to join. Okay, so it looks like most people on the webinar are in quality, which is great considering it's the main topic of the webinar, and a lot of people in clinical as well, which obviously fantastic. And the people in medical devices and other areas, I think you'll get a lot out of this conversation as well. So thanks for answering those questions. Okay, let's start then. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thanks so much for joining and welcome to an exciting event for BioTalent Social. You can expect an hour of a panel discussion with a live Q&A at the end, and half an hour of networking for those that wish to continue the conversation further. So my name is Charlotte Morris. I'll be the host and chair for this webinar. Here in Los Angeles, I head up QA recruitment at BioTalent. I'm not only passionate about growing diversity in the QA space, but also creating awareness across the full life sciences cycle. So we want to make this discussion as engaging as possible. So if you've got any questions for our panel throughout the webinar, feel free to ask them in the side panel or in the Q&A section at the end, and we'll get through as many of these as possible. There'll also be a couple of polls that you can get involved in as well. And lastly, just as a side note before we kick things off, this webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to our BioTalent Social YouTube channel, where you can also access upcoming webinars and podcasts. Okay, so to start, I'd just like to introduce our fantastic panel of 4 incredibly unique and accomplished leaders in the QA space. Panel, if you'd want to introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about what you do currently. John, as you're the first one on my screen, you can go first.
Good evening, everyone. John McKay. I have about 38 years of global experience, executive and senior management experience in various different functional areas and quality and manufacturing, technical operations, regulatory affairs, clinical affairs, supply chain management, project management, and one of my favorite, operational excellence. My education is in chemical engineering. I have a master's also in regulatory affairs and quality assurance, and I also completed the Wharton management program at University of Pennsylvania, Wharton Business School. And so what I try to do is combine all of the experience to deliver products to patients that need them. I've experienced in pharmaceutical, medical device, combination products, biologics, the chemical industry, energy, and automotive and aerospace. And one thing I've learned is that there are a lot of good and best practices to share across industries, across functional areas, and hopefully you'll get that. Today, one interesting fact I'll share is I've completed projects in about 32 countries I've had expat assignments in UK, Germany, Brazil, and China, but definitely glad to be back in the United States.
Great, thanks, John. Thanks for introducing yourself. And Sharmaine, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I can go next. Sharmaine Kelly. I'm currently right now a senior DCP QA manager at Springworks Therapeutic, which is a rare disease oncology company. Part of my role and my experience, I've been in the industry for about 12 years now, and majority of my experience has been within the GCP quality side. I've worked with inspection readiness, whether that be from the FDA or EMA inspections, being involved with those audits, bringing quality events, different arenas within quality. I've worked on the CRO and on the sponsor side, so I have a unique experience having worked for large and small CROs and pharma as well. I would say one interesting fact for me is the shirt that I have on today is striped because today is Rare Disease Day. So definitely want to make sure everyone notes wear stripes today if you can.
Great, thanks so much, Sharmaine. Love that.
Yeah.
And Shari?
Hello, everyone. I'm Shari Sharif. I'm an independent GCP consultant and an auditor. I end up doing a lot more audits than anything else. I sometimes am able to help organizations with their QMS development, as well as any internal audits that they may have. And for the past 20 years, I've been in the industry with over 11 years in the quality assurance space. I have, for the past year, been independent, and that allows me to work with all kinds of different organizations within GCP, which is my expertise, from drug makers to CROs to core labs and the clinical research sites. I really love what I do. I learn a lot from everyone. And one interesting fact is that from my window yesterday, I enjoyed seeing palm trees and snow all in one snapshot. So here in Southern California, and I'm happy to be here today.
That's great. Was that San Diego, Shari?
No, actually Orange County, between San Diego. Oh, you're in LA. So.
Yeah.
We got a storm this week.
Crazy week.
Yep.
Yeah. Robert, if you'd like to finish off.
Sure, thank you. My name is Rob Whitfield. I'm a senior manager GCP quality assurance at EQRX. And my background is I have about 26 years in clinical development and now QA. I've had roles in monitoring, project management, SOP development, and training. My interest in our industry is really in supporting and advocating my clinical partners, other cross-functional partners, to do the right thing, sometimes facing a lot of other pressures and things that need to be done as priority. Gosh, I had trouble thinking of an interesting fact, but I'm an AIDS educator. That's where I started. My degree is actually in public health, and my brother died of HIV. So that's led to my interest in really helping patients and this industry.
That's great. Thanks so much for sharing that. And thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. So let's jump into the first question. There should be a poll coming up on your screen now, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. While we wait for the audience answers, let's hear what the panelists have to say on this. We actually spoke previously during our pre-panel discussion about the conflict that may be foreseen between quality and clinical functions. Is conflict too strong of a word to describe this transaction, or have you experienced this yourself? I know John and Robert had a few things to say on this one when we spoke before.
You want to go, Rob?
I don't want to steal. I keep thinking of the term provocative, John, that you use so well. So I was worried that I was going to steal that term, but I guess I did, kind of. So I think my initial reaction to the term conflict was one of concern, I would say, and sort of questioning whether that was the correct term. And I think, as we saw with the poll earlier, that it may be. As I said earlier, come from a predominant background on the clinical operations and development side. So I think I've seen this interaction, if you will, of clinical and quality from both sides. And I do recall folks on my clinical team telling us to not let quality know when something happened, when maybe there was an error, a deviation. And I was always, I hope, pushing to build those bridges. And today, now on the quality side, I continue to try to maybe bridge that conflict or bridge that perception of conflict, and be a good team member that comes from a place of non-judgment or respect for the team, and trying to help us get through some of the challenges that we face.
Yes, I would agree. I use the term provocative in that, there could be conflict, and with any type of conflict, disagreement, you always want to start with, well, what is the common ground? The common ground is the patient. The common ground is it being in compliance, and the common grounds that have very good clinical development, good clinical trials, and of course, good commercial products. And so what you want to do, you want to have everyone enrolled on the same team, just like a Super Bowl team is a team that can play well the best together and can perform the best together. Offense, defense, special teams, what have you. You want to minimize conflict. You want to draw a common ground. You want to basically let the patient needs speak first. I'm wearing stripes today also because I'm in rare disease. I work for one of the largest rare disease companies in the world. By the way, my comments are my own, not my company's. But one thing I'll mention is that you really want to have a dynamic relationship with quality as the hub for all these different departments: clinical operations, clinical affairs. I remember as a vice president overseeing quality and clinical and regulatory, and so people couldn't hide, so to speak. They couldn't hide anything from quality, if you will. But the whole idea is quality is an enabler for making sure products get approved, make sure the patient's protected, and make sure that clinical trials are doing. In Europe, they really are looking at risk management around clinical trials and making sure that the quality by design that happens on the GMP side is also done with clinical trials, and that clinical trials really have quality built in from the very beginning. Not only patient focused, but patient safety, efficacy, and making sure that quality is in place with metrics. And so, there's the conflicts on there, but the best companies and best teams minimize conflict and find common ground and work from there.
Yeah, I kind of want to add on to that. I think that one of the ways that our departments can work better together, and that I see a lot of companies doing, is implementing quality within the clinical organization. So when you have that quality management team, that is kind of that bridge between clinical and quality assurance, it helps to better engage and have those conversations where it's not just coming from quality assurance that we're the police and we're trying to tell you, but when it's embedded, like everyone has been saying, within your plans and within your processes, and we can all work together more collectively.
Yeah, I really respond to that, Sharmaine. I try to be a face, and I have the luxury of being on one program or one team. So I try to be at every meeting and all the sub-team meetings, and be supportive of the team that I work with across functions, and let them know, I've actually been in most of the cases in those other roles. So I understand all the pressures. I hate to keep bringing that up again, but sometimes I think the risk to quality is that they think on the other side that maybe I will listen out and take care of everything for them, and trying to really support them and encourage them to ask questions and to think about what quality means and their responsibility for that.
The other thing you want to do is have a weekly meeting with clinical. We have in my company and other companies I work for. We have a weekly clinical quality meeting where each side brings different agenda items to the meeting. We talk about things. We work through solutions. And what's nice about having that weekly meeting, you always have a weekly touch point to work together, collaborate. We do that with technical operations. We do that with supply chain as well. Then we have a monthly meeting with all the functional areas in R&D, where the main focus is efficiency, taking care of the patient, making sure any quality issues or compliance issues are noted and addressed, and also to share good best practices among the different functional areas. So a monthly meeting with the entire R&D team, and then a weekly meeting with quality, several meetings with quality and the various different functional areas that we work closely with. Those meetings are very effective in ensuring items are worked on, things are collaborated on, and issues are addressed.
Yeah, I can definitely say having those weekly or bi-weekly meetings definitely help, because we do the same thing to bridge the gaps and to engage in more communication with the functional areas, more specifically with clinical.
Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts there. And looks like we've got the audience answers here, which by a long shot sometimes, which seems to make the most sense of what you were saying. There's still a fair amount of people that say there aren't a conflict, which is great. Hopefully that continues to be that way. And a few people with yes, there is, and that not sure. So yeah, it seems like occasionally there are definitely some issues between quality and clinical. So the next topic we're going to cover is regarding the growing complexity of regulations. So 2023 marks the year of tighter regulations. According to the FDA, EMA, companies will need to be more accountable in order to pass requirements. Does this mean that regulations become more complex, or is this just what was expected? I know, Sharmaine, you had a couple of things to say on this one when we spoke before.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. I think that part of the more so tighter regulations is when it comes to risk management and oversight. There is becoming the responsibility and the oversight that sponsors have, whether it's over the vendors that we have contracted or the vendors that the vendors have contracted, those third-party vendors. The responsibility is relying more on the sponsor and not just we're giving everything to who we outsource. We're having the regulations and the guidelines are putting a lot more ownership on us, which, in a sense, we should already be there and having that oversight of those partners that we are working with. But the guidelines and the regulations are moving more in that way and making sure that more risk controls are put in place to manage those vendors that we are outsourcing to.
Yes, I would agree. I mean, clearly, it's funny, 2003 marks the year. Every year, the regulations get tighter, and if the regulations don't change, what happens is the enforcement gets tighter, especially in the United States. The FDA puts out, warning letters, and that's a notice to industry. That's training the industry. If you want to see what the FDA is working on, just do a monthly read of the warning letters. But clearly, the focus is going to be, as Sharmaine said, risk management is key. Supplier management is probably the most universal thing that a regulatory agency is looking for. How are you managing your suppliers? How are you making sure that they're doing what they need to do? How are you auditing them? How are you following up on their deviations, CAPAs, and change control? And how are you making sure that you're involved with every phase of the product development, clinical development, all the supply chain issues? And then, of course, data integrity is huge. Making sure that that you're following up in every aspect of data integrity, whether it's doing searching audit trails, whether it's looking at batch record review, whether it's looking at making sure that the protocols aren't deviated from, making sure that you're monitoring, and in your audits, you're always checking data integrity. And when you find issues that you surface those, you issue a cap, you issue a deviation, you investigate those, and you basically put in corrective action and preventive action to prevent those from happening. FDA has gone on record saying this year, if you have any data integrity issues on the inspection, that's automatically going to a warning letter, because they feel that the industry has gotten lax in doing that. And if you see warning letters with data integrity, they have an extra page and a half of information, boilerplate information that they add, and they basically say you need to get a consultant in to help you out because you don't know what you're doing. Basically, they do it in a nice way, but that's pretty much what the words say. You know, that you don't know what you're doing, and you need help, get help, and then come back to us with a plan with help. So those are areas that are focusing on. We also talked about things that are happening in the medical device regulations. You know, MDSAP, the medical device single audit program, is hot and heavy, getting going on with the notified bodies and making sure that you're following up on that. And all these things around regulatory things fall into three categories. One is constant surveillance to make sure that you're up on emerging regulations, standards, and guidelines and warning letters. The second thing is making sure that you have strong internal audit programs to do internal audits, to do mock inspections, to follow up on it. And then the third leg of that stool is making sure that you're auditing all of your suppliers very heavily, you know, ranking them based on criticality. You know, some suppliers are going to audit every year, some are going to audit every 2 years, some every 3 years. Then there's for-cause audits that come up. And so making sure that you're auditing those, and in the clinical space, making sure you're doing very good monitoring. And that once you do those activities, that you're following up with them to make sure that they're closing those out with objective evidence, not just saying, okay, yeah, we close it out. Okay, what's the objective evidence? Give me the objective evidence. Don't wait for the next audit or the next monitoring to get objective evidence. Get that ahead of time and follow up on it. So those things are very important. And yes, things are getting tighter. Two things are happening: more regulations, more standards, more guidelines, but also a lot more enforcement.
Thanks, John. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Shari or Robert, you look like you were nodding along there for a while. They had some input there.
For one, I appreciate tighter enforcement or more enforcement. I think if I can speak plainly, I think sometimes coming from the background that I have, I've talked to colleagues about corner cutting and poor behavior being acceptable until we get caught, or until they get caught. And so I think it helps us when we have evidence of enforcement and tighter regulation. It just reinforces the message that I send to my teams, frankly, that quality matters. So I appreciate that. I think something Sharmaine said that resonated with me is this issue of risk. Having been in the industry for more than 2 decades, and thinking about risk and how we manage risk, I think I said to John in our earlier conversation, when I was a monitor, I would say I managed risk, but not with any particular plan. Like, I knew the site I was going to and the things I needed to get done in a site visit. But so I was kind of managing my risk and the things that I could get done, but it wasn't in a planned way. And I think that's what I try to encourage my teams to think about is, what is the plan? How do we plan? We can be reactive, which is often the case. I think that we wait until something happens, so there's actually a quality issue, and then we respond, and then hopefully that will be a lesson to encourage changing things or developing in a better direction. But often it's just like, okay, well, that happened, let's move on to the next thing. So people perceive quality issues as risk in a way. So we need a lot of education on that front for our teams.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, thanks for that insight there. And just in the interest of time, make sure that we cover all topics. The next thing to discuss would be the budgeting challenges. So according to the online magazine Medium, in 2022, there's set to be budgeting challenges, particularly within patient safety from a QA perspective. What challenges have you noticed so far in 2023?
One challenge in 2023, I think that most companies are facing, hopefully some people aren't going through layoffs, but it could be less, but an overall cash management perspective. The idea that, okay, no one has unlimited funds, so not only how are you prioritizing those, but how are you adjusting those monthly? You know, the whole idea of activity-based costing and dynamic budgeting is very, very key to making adjustments. So certain things, for example, if you look at audit programs, can you do audit programs where you have auditors maybe doing audits regionally versus going across international ones as a way of cutting costs? That's an idea. But the whole idea of cash management is very, very key for a lot of companies as well, in saying, well, how do we manage cash? How do we stop doing things that we can delay or to delay to next year, and how do we prioritize things? And those activities that we're actually going to do, how can we do them in the most fiscally responsible manner? Are there ways we can save money while still making sure we're in compliance and making sure that patient safety is protected and making sure that we're meeting all the regulations? But is there a more efficient way? Is there a more cost-effective way? And let's look at old models and say, do we still need to spend money on certain things?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I mean, are there any sort of ideas that you would have to help with cash management?
Yes. One is if you can delay activities, then you can delay activities, whether it's for later in the year or even next year. If you look at a risk-based management system, then obviously you want to spend money on things that are top priorities, but things that are lower risk, perhaps you don't do as much or you don't do as frequently, or you take a break this year and do them next year. So the idea of adding risk management to the budgeting process. And the key is that also, what are some ways that you can prevent your suppliers from costing you money? The idea of cost sharing. If they're doing things that you have to spend money for, well, then as you look at the bills, maybe they're discounts they can provide. Maybe it's like they caused this to happen, so we need to get a discount on something that's happened. So the idea of cost sharing. Suppliers don't like that, but at the end of the day, we're spending a lot of money on these suppliers, and if they just keep charging us annual increases and we don't get discounts because they have bad performance, and that's not fair.
Yeah, that's really interesting. All right. Does anyone else on the panel have any insights on that? No? Okay. Well, sorry. Go ahead, Robert.
That's okay. I don't have much insight on budgeting per se, but I was reminded of an experience that I had within the past several years where I was new to a company. I was speaking with one of the project managers and I asked, well, will you bring this particular issue up when you talk during your team meeting? And she said, well, we ran out of money for team meetings. And this study was slated to continue for a number of years. I was like, what do you mean you ran out of money for team meetings? How are you communicating with your CRO team or with the larger team cross-functionally? How are you sharing any issues or concerns or talking about plans and amendments to the protocol? So it was just curious to me, again, as a relatively new QA person, to walk into a team and say, bring this up in a team meeting. And I was told the budget didn't allow for more team meetings. I was like, well, that we need to figure out how to manage this.
One other thing I'll bring up is the cost of quality. And we as quality professionals need to constantly remind people that if you do it right the first time, you don't have to do it 2 and 3, 4 times. If you choose good suppliers, they're not making off-grade batches. If you have them with strong programs, they're not making products that have non-conformances. So the whole idea of eliminating waste, going back to Deming and Duran, I mean that's a very, very key important thing to saving money, is not wasting money. The other thing is that if you're going traveling, you're doing conferences, whatever, get those tickets, get those reservations, get everything as quickly as you can to save money, get the cheapest rates. That may not seem like a lot, but it adds up quite a bit when you look at a global company and a lot of people doing that. So if you have travel plans, get the airline tickets, get the early bird specials, do whatever you can to save money to do those activities. We did study another company I worked for. We did that like very rigorously for a whole year. We wound up being able to do 2 and 3 times as much because we were saving so much on just the idea of planning and the idea of taking advantage of discounts early on. But the cost of quality was what comes up to me as well, is that there's a huge cost in off grade and waste. And suppliers come into mind here. The best suppliers help you save money.
That's great. Thanks so much for the insights there. That's really, really interesting. The next topic to discuss is actually going to be the career opportunities in the clinical quality space right now, which I think is a big topic for everyone at the moment. What career opportunities do you foresee in the clinical quality industry and in the biotech industry as a whole in 2023?
I'll take that on. I've been around a little bit, and what we've all seen since the year 2000 is an increase in the use of technology. And so far, as a result of that, we've seen an increased need for software engineers, software developers, data managers, those who can actually protect the data from all ends and all angles, from data breach and any point electronically that the data can be attacked or available for those who shouldn't be seeing the data or accessing the data. In addition to that, we've had the need for data protection officers, with the data protection being such a big deal within the past recent years, especially initiated by the European researchers and guidance authorities. And so compliance officers, data protection officers, and risk management experts in the area of quality assurance in all of GXP, whether it's clinical lab, pharmacovigilance, manufacturing, and very, very underlining computerized system validation experts. Those folks are really busy these days, and they're really able to collaborate with the biotech industry in order to provide best service and data accuracy for the data owners. So those careers have really, I've seen pop up. And of course, many of these roles are taking place remotely, and it's creating a different environment. You have more accessible pool of folks globally. You have basically a nice merge of technology and information systems incorporating into the clinical trials, the clinical arena, to a point where the rest of us, with, let's say myself, I've got a clinical background, I've really got to step up my game and my knowledge about technology, and because I'm using those tools more than ever before today to be able to do the work that I do. And as I mentioned, I do a lot of audits, but when it comes to, let's say, QMS consultancy, it's really then honing in on where are the gaps that we have in our documents that don't cover us, don't assess the risks that are there, can be there for attack to our vulnerable and blind spots, vulnerable areas and blind spots. So those are some of the roles that I've seen pop up in our industry in general.
Thanks, Sherry. Yeah, I've definitely noticed that myself as well. I think when we spoke about this previously before as well, I think, John, you had a couple of ideas on this as well.
Yes, and so this things are booming in the biotech industry, whether it's pharmaceutical, medical devices, diagnostics, biologics. And what's nice about being in quality or being in clinical in general is that you have organic growth at companies, you have new companies growing, you have companies acquiring and growing things. There's a lot of unmet need out there, so it all serves the patients. But right now, there are tons of jobs available. That we're going to talk about contract work next, but there's tons of jobs, FTE jobs, full-time equivalent, contract jobs, for project work. Things are really booming now, and that's because the industry is growing, and that's because we're satisfying patients, and we're discovering some very nice therapies for patients. But at all levels, there are a lot of openings out there. As a hiring manager, it's tough to hire people these days, just because you know that they're going to have at least another offer or maybe several offers. And what's happening also is that as we look at things, I've worked globally my entire career, but as we look at things, we have to realize that since COVID, people are no longer relocating like they used to. They, whether they have another spouse, whether they just like Southern California or wherever else, Raleigh, Durham, or whatever they want to be, they now realize that they have a choice, because the model has changed, in that you don't go into office 5 days a week. And if you do, that's fine. But if you don't, you can work remotely. And so a lot of the transition that happening is that people are no longer looking at a geography for jobs. They're looking in the entire nation, and sometimes globally. And so not only are the number of jobs grown, but the opportunities have grown or grown exponentially, because the geography has spread out even more. You're no longer limited to your state or your area or whatever. And I'm a manufacturing person by start. I'm always want to go into the plant or the lab. But realistic is that if you have, I used to work for a large one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. They had a saying: the sun never sets on our company. So you can't be everywhere at all times. And so the whole idea is that you want to be able to go into an office or a lab or manufacturing facility when you can, but things are wide open these days. It really, I'm amazed at how open things are, as far as just the number and the diversity of job opportunities, and just the geographic spread of the job opportunities.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And obviously, with that, how do you think the war for talent in the clinical quality space has affected the overall hiring process? There's not that many people in the world who have strong GCP experience, which can be really critical for some hires. How have you found that at the moment?
You have to be nimble. I mean, you have to really galvanize your internal group to get these interviews done and get these decisions made, because people can get a job offer in the middle of your interview. If you have them out as 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 interviews, and you stressed it out, that person is going to be accepting a job somewhere else by the time, because there's that many jobs opening. And typically people that are looking for jobs tend to be kind of pretty good at what they do, and they may be looking for a higher level position, a different type of position, a different culture. And so when it's a healthy competition. I do a lot with football, and the free agency market is tight. People have a lot of choices where they can go. There are a lot of opportunities out there. So how you as a hiring organization, you have to be nimble in your interview process, and sell your company, in addition to them selling themselves, sell your company, enroll in your company, inspire them for serving your patients, and get them enrolled in your company. Otherwise, they will be enrolled by someone else. There's a courtship, right? People like being recruited. People like being courted. You have to court people, and you have to get them enrolled in your process and get them connected to you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I know, Shari, you had some ideas on this as well, being a GCP consultant yourself.
Yeah, I just to say, I haven't been in a hiring role for many years. At the same time, at my end, I can say, somewhat to dovetail to what John was saying, it's a global environment now. So we are sitting remotely, let's just say, for for the most part, many of us sitting remotely, and we have folks that are globally looking for our expertise. At the same time, I'm looking for a global environment to serve as well. So you have many people looking for opportunities, and you have many organizations looking for talent in this global space. It is a nice and it's a healthy challenge and competition. At the same time, it's just really what I see mostly are folks that are hired to hire me, to look for talent, and no longer is a hiring manager sitting there calling folks up that are local, able to come to the office. So it's a different environment, and hiring entities do have to really step up and show that they're a place where folks want to work and others want to do business. So it does put some pressure on the hiring entities. At the same time, what I also see is a lot more contract work versus full-time employment, full-time equivalent as well, more than full-time work. So the relationships are changing a little bit. We are now trying it before we buy it. And so it's different. It's different, but it's for the most part, we are adapting. We have been adapting to it.
Yeah, and I think you'd be a good person to speak on the next topic as well. As John mentioned about the rise of contract work, have you seen an influx in contract work?
Mute. I have seen an influx in contract work. Again, I mean, I get requests from outside of the country quite a bit. So, and for that work, I don't even have to travel to those countries. So I can do them from anywhere I am, at the beach in Southern California. Just kidding.
Yeah.
But yes, there's a lot, and 6 month, 1 year, shorter term. And so that allows those of us who like to work independently to be able to choose what's the healthiest way for us to provide the service we provide. Because in essence, none of us want to put ourselves in a position where we're not providing, those of us in quality assurance, that is, we don't want to provide work that is not our best product. And so it does allow for folks that work differently to be able to work according to how they can perform best.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And just to make sure we've got time at the end for the Q&A, let's end on what would you say the benefits of working on a contract basis are?
I'll take that. You know, for me, I'll speak for myself. The benefits are a combination of being able to manage my life, and I'm at a point in my life where I do see the need to really balance the career, the personal life, and the things we want to do before we leave this world, because after all, life is short. And during the pandemic, we saw that it can be shorter than we think it is. At the same time, the benefit is for someone like myself, again, I get to learn from different teams, different groups, different organizations, different quality management systems. And I get to learn from that. And I also get to impart my knowledge and my wisdom and that which I've gained over the past several years to those organizations, to those entities. I come from a site level and I love going to sites. I do a lot of investigator site audits. And when I do, I not only feel kind of back at home, but I also love being able to look at what's going on today. What are investigator sites dealing with these days? And I really do see myself as someone who actually helps them to not only identify their blind spots, but it also propels them, those who really want to do well, to step up their game and step up their policies and standards so that they can protect themselves, continue to do more business, and really be in compliance with all of the demands and the complexities of our regulations as we go forward.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much for sharing that. So we've just got time at the end, about 15 minutes to answer a Q&A. There's about 4 questions to answer so far. One of them's just come through actually directly for you, Shari. They've asked, Manali has asked, what will be the best platform to look for contract work? She knows networking is important, but is there anything else that can be done to get a contract-based consulting role?
Yes, being available and being on all kinds of search engines without having to advertise right now. I want to say that LinkedIn has really helped me. I've been on LinkedIn for a while, for many years, more years than I like to admit, since they actually started LinkedIn. And it really has allowed others to access me, to find me and find my talent. Also, if, I'm a big believer of relationships. Definitely, we're all in different, we work in different environments and spaces. Anytime that there can be collaboration, anytime that there can be any type of service provided, don't burn those bridges. Folks that may not need your help today may need your help tomorrow. And so as long as we are building relationships, putting ourselves out there, and actually doing good work, providing good service, because no one's going to come after you if you don't have a good reputation. And for that, you got to like what you do. So go after what you like and do it well. And that's, and you'll be found.
Love that. Thanks, Shari. We also have a question from LinkedIn Live. Hamish asked, to companies looking to extend cash runway, what can you do to define the ROI of quality to senior leadership?
I can answer that when I do that every day. So the key is that you want to talk dollars and talk cost of quality. That's what people hear. And so the cost of a deviation caused by a supplier, the cost of, okay, this batch is filled, we now have to produce this batch again. Look at what we spent to produce this batch. If it had been done right by a vendor or by us, we wouldn't have, this is money wasted. We can't use this product. And so the whole idea of that is that it happened during World War II. I mean, Deming went to Japan and ignited a country after World War II, who's now an economic giant. Do things the quality way, do things right the first time, do planning and blend quality in everywhere. Those are the most successful companies. Those are the companies that make the most profits, and those are the companies that have the best return on investment. You have to do things right, and you have to do it the first time right. And then on the other end, defensively, prevent yourself from going out of compliance. Inspection readiness, making sure that you have the shortest pathway to getting a product approved is not have issues on your pre-approval inspection. Is not to have issues if there's an inspection coming up. And so the whole idea of compliance equals dollars, and good compliance equals savings and profits.
Great. Thanks for that, John. And for another question that's just been asked by an anonymous attendee, any advice for a fresh graduate without any experience, very interested in getting into quality? Because even the entry-level roles require a bit of experience.
Yeah, I'll answer this one. So I started out in manufacturing, and how I went into quality and environmental health and safety was that out of the manufacturing ranks, all the facilities I managed had the best quality record and the best environmental health and safety record. I was rewarded handsomely for that. And basically, I was even asked by senior management, hey, why don't you go into quality? Why don't you go into environmental health and safety? Because we need more people with manufacturing experience. And so for a new graduate, you want to take training courses. You want to get a certification, and you want to try to get projects in quality, volunteer for projects, be the first one at the door to help with a CAPA, a deviation investigation. hone your skills on the quality tools, and your career will grow exponentially.
Yeah, I'd like to support John in that. I tried for almost a decade to break into quality, but I had the advantage of being on the clinical development side, but it took some convincing for folks to understand that I really had an interest in quality and could do the job. But I tried to take training courses in audit and quality management, anything I could do, going to summits and things like that, just volunteering to help with projects, to help resolve observations from an audit in certain companies, just so I could get some of that experience and sort of build my toolbox, if you will, and convince people that I was interested. And it also goes back to something Shari said as well, is building bridges, or not burning bridges, or making sure your relationships are a fundamental of how you work and doing a good job, and building those mentors, if you will, or those relationships, and being able to leverage that as you continue to grow and develop, or find that role that you want. So you kind of have to put yourself in the place to get noticed in that sense, and continue to build skills.
Perfect. Thank you both for that. The last question that we have here is, how often do you as CQA professionals provide unsolicited advice versus responses to questions from clinical teams and functions? And when applicable, how is it typically received, and what makes this type of communication most effective?
So you have to become the guardrails of your company. You know, if anyone bowls, they've seen that where the guardrails come up when little children bowl, and it prevents the ball from going into the gutter. You want to be the guardrails of your company to prevent gutter balls. And so you want to speak up. You know, many times you have knowledge people don't have, you have experience people don't have, you have tools that people don't have. And so you want to be a beacon for your company. You want to provide advice. You want to listen also. You want to listen to what concerns they have or what needs they have, but you always want to speak up, because that's the role of quality. I mean, the role of quality is to alert, to counsel, to advise, to guide, to mentor, and to help, and both internally in the company, but also with suppliers. And so you want to be a resource person. Once you start solving problems, and once you start presenting ideas, solutions, if you will, have a solution-based approach, people will seek you out. It's like now serving number 10. I mean, people will line up to come to you.
Yeah,
Okay.
sometimes I think we're the conscience of the team, or the conscience of the program. And sometimes I'm the first to call the question, but sometimes I'm supporting the person that asked the question and helping them work through solutions. And I think earlier I said I try to be the face at the table in the team meetings, and I nod a lot, as someone here noticed. So I try to be very interactive, and I laughed a bit because often I get accused of unsolicited advising. But I'm also the person that hopefully my team, and they've shown this, they'll send an instant message to, or an email to, and ask me to speak to something, or just ask me a question. How do I find this? And so I try to be that resource for my teams as well, and help them present the solution or the answer, and support them in that. So I think it comes from a place of respect and non-judgment for the folks who work with. And it's hard sometimes. It's hard to not judge things, but there's a skill to being, or a skill to the way you present things, that I think you gain over experience. And I sometimes say it's because I'm a Southerner, which some folks may understand here in the States, but yeah, I have a particular softer style sometimes. But sometimes you have to be assertive and aggressive if it comes down to it.
Yeah, and I think you want to ask questions too. You know, a lot of things can happen. You can guide a lot of conversations, and you can get a lot of information if you ask questions and listen, and you basically help drive people towards a solution. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to solve all the problems we have, to serve the patients, and to give products to patients. And so the more problems we can solve, the more things we can do together, the more we can collaborate. My company has a number of core values. One of them is together we're stronger. And that's the whole key. A team together, everyone achieves more. And so you want to promote collaboration, promote discussion, and promote an environment of problem solving, as well as an environment of data-based decision making.
That's great. Sharmaine, Shari, do you have any other insights on that question or any
Yeah,
of the questions?
Yeah, with the last one, I think, having a solution-based approach when people are coming to you with questions. I've gotten a lot where, when I'm getting questions from other functional areas and in my various roles that I've had is how, even if the approach that they have, coming to you might be a little aggressive, having the calm demeanor and giving back a response goes it goes further than you can anticipate. So when you're providing a response back, kind of like what I was saying earlier, if you're not coming at them like you're telling them what to do, but this is a helpful response, and also I think when you're able to tie it back to a regulation or a guideline, that also helps their approach as well, because they're not just saying, oh, this is just what they're thinking, it's the opinion. It's like, no, this is how it should be done based on, ICGCP, whatever this regulation is, this is based on the SOP or the process, tying it in that way will definitely help when you're getting asked questions.
Great point, Sharmaine. Yeah, for sure.
I
Yep.
completely agree. Just for a few seconds, Sharmaine took the words right out of my mouth. It's really, as long as you're able to tie your response to the regulations. I think a lot of larger organizations, at least from my point of view, do get stuck in their volumes of QMS documents. But really, at the end of the day, it's really, what are we responsible here for? And it cannot be argued. This is,
Right.
this is what we've got to do. Let's just talk about how
Exactly.
we're going to do it.
Right. Have to do it. How are we going to do it?
And also, there's a lot of objective evidence for your decision making, whether it's guidelines, whether it's standards, whether it's regulations, whether it's warning letters. The FDA has been around since 1906, and they've seen it all. Not one person, but the organization, and the other regulatory agencies have been around a long time too. And so many times the problems that we're facing, others have faced them and solved them. And so one thing my dad always taught me is, learn from others, have your knowledge, but learn from other people and get their knowledge too. And a lot of times it's helpful to learn from others' mistakes. And those are warning letters, or learn, well, what solutions have others tried, and then build on that, make them even better. But most of the problems that are occurring these days, it has happened before somewhere else, or something similar, or someone has figured it out. And so, don't the key is, don't repeat people's mistakes, learn from those mistakes, but also do it in a teaching manner as well. Train people, help them build their knowledge as they come along, and help them learn, okay, well, this isn't just John saying this, this is actually an FDA requirement, or this is from the EMA, or gee, look at this warning letter. I didn't make this up. This is what the FDA is saying to industry. And so the whole idea of making sure that people learn, be a learning organization, be an organization that constantly improves itself and learns.
And I also, for one, I interact with my teams outside of issues or problems. I'll just, it's different now that I'm remote and I have to find other avenues or other ways to interact, but just contacting someone and ask how their day's going. Sometimes they'll offer, a question that you can then interact with. But when I was new to my last company, I just walked up to the floor where all the clinical folks sat and introduced myself and started talking to teams, and I'd regularly just pop up there between meetings and just see how things were going. So just again, trying to bring it back to the personal interaction. Often I share articles and updates that I found just with various teams, just to sort of engage in conversation and give them that why answers, sometimes unrelated to any particular event, but just to let them know that this is what happens and these are the things that we see. So I think that's helpful for starting the conversation, or at least it plants a seed in their mind sometimes, and comes back to the work that we do.
That's great. Thanks everyone for your answers on those questions. Yeah, I think that was really insightful. And Andrew Jan wants to say thank you to the panel for answering his questions so thoroughly. So that is great. And that's about it from us. That's the hour. Thank you so much for sharing your morning, evening, or lunchtime with us. And thank you to all of our speakers as well for sharing your insights, and to our amazing audience for participating. For those who wish to continue the conversation further, please do join our networking rooms using the link in the chat. That's just been posted there by Alfie, and we can dive deeper into any of the topics that have been covered today. But that's about it from me. So thank you everyone for attending, and we'll see you at the next webinar. All right.